You may have noticed I've been spending a lot of time addressing burnout and change fatigue in the nonprofit sector. In keeping with my efforts to help you in addressing these issues within your workplace, I invited Ruvi Makuni of Fit Active Toned to join me to discuss workplace wellness. Ruvi is a global workplace wellness specialist and a certified executive wellness coach. She's been doing a lot of work around how to stay healthy working from home. Thank you so much for joining us, Ruvi. I look forward to hearing all of the tips that you have to share about workplace wellness. Ruvi, thank you so much for joining me today. Would you mind introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about your company and the services that you offer to the nonprofit sector?
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you for inviting me. And my name is Ruvi Makuni. I am a corporate wellness specialist, and I support employees in nonprofit and for-profit organizations really take control of their health and prioritize their health. And I do this through my wellness programs.
Okay. So you actually go into the nonprofit organization and you help them build wellness programs that are specific to their staff, their needs, any issues that they've identified.
That's correct. And one of my primary steps, in fact, is when I go into an organization, I like to get introduced to the employees first and but get to know them, do an assessment of what they would want in a program. Because oftentimes what I've seen, one of the mistakes I've seen with organizations is they'll implement, a wellness program that seems a little forced maybe on employees, or they'll introduce initiatives that employees are not necessarily interested in, like a gym membership, which is great. However, sometimes that's not necessarily their concern, and you find that engagement is low. And so when I like to find out from the employees what they would want and what are their pain points. And then from there, I design a program based on their needs. And plus, this is a great advantage for organizations as well, because engagement is higher, because employees feel that they are part of creating a wellness program for themselves. But also, it's cost effective for companies when you actually provide programs or initiatives that employees want and that they'll actually use.
Yeah, I think that's, you hit the nail on the head, especially in the nonprofit sector. Money is so, kind of thin, and they're always needing to respond to different needs and different issues. And if you're meeting your staff where you need to, and you're identifying exactly where you have some gap areas, you're using the most efficient, or you're utilizing your resources in the most efficient way. So I actually had you come on, Ruvi, because we are seeing such an increase in the turnover at nonprofit organizations. It's always been high, around the 20% level, but we're even seeing it as high as 40% right now because of burnout. So that's a huge challenge. It's always been a challenge, right? There's a few reasons why. One being, if you get into this work, it's because you're passionate about the issue. You are so driven that you're willing to sacrifice time, your family, your salary to do whatever you need to do to fulfill that mission. You may not stand up for yourself because you're worried about the organization suffering as a result. So passion can really get in the way, and then unhealthy organizational cultures, because we really, and this is true, Ruvi, I'm sure you've seen it in the corporate sector, where we celebrate stress. Yes. We celebrate all of this drama and high level intense. If you sacrifice the most, you're the best. And that's all into the nonprofit sector as well, right? So those are two areas that I really feel like leadership can make a difference, but also it becomes almost a personal accountability issue. Can you talk to me a little bit about some ways that leadership with assistance from and support from staff, could build some potential wellness, like a wellness culture, to build a healthy organizational culture, and to do so meeting the recognized gaps within their organization.
That is such a great question. And wow, those statistics are pretty high. And it's so true. I see a lot of employees and organizations highly stressed and burnt out, quite frankly. And in these, we are in challenging times in terms of everything going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, just like you mentioned, it's always been almost like a badge of honor to be busy. And
absolutely. Girl, I fell down that rabbit hole too. I once did that. It's easy if it's how you're recognized, and you're look at how much she's sacrificing, right? Absolutely. We're going to have to stop doing that. And that's a bigger issue for another day, Ruvi.
Yeah, that is so true, because stress has almost been normalized, and it's not normal to constantly be, feeling like you are burnt out. And so one thing that I would definitely ask organizations and leaders to prioritize is that, even just very simply, prioritizing simple wellness habits that they can start adopting themselves, and actually sharing and exemplifying that with, to their teammates. And it could be simple things such as, not emailing or sending out emails after 5 o'clock, for example, or using or enforcing some sort of wellness initiative where this is our work time, especially if everyone's working from home, from 8 till 5, and after 5, no emails. And the reason why is because oftentimes when people receive an email at 8 p.m. from their boss, they're likely going to answer it, right? And so you're constantly almost on call, whether it's the evening or the early morning, weekends. So just enforcing, or just encouraging employees that, let's do a little challenge where after 5, let's do a step challenge. So we shut off at 5 and we go. And I guess this is specifically for maybe people working from home, where I'm seeing that people are working much longer hours because there isn't that structured work schedule.
Yep. They're blurring the lines between work and home now. Yeah.
Exactly. And then maybe at that point, encouraging employees to take a walk, to shut off, or just breathe, use that.
Like their commute. They could take their commute.
Exactly. Take your commute around the neighborhood.
That's right.
And so that's something very simple, very inexpensive. But if employee or leaders start encouraging self-care habits and into people's daily routine. And as far as stress, oftentimes too, leaders, if they can start maybe sharing that they've started doing yoga, or encouraging the employees to do yoga, or to come in or bring in a wellness consultant. That's one thing I work with organizations on, is incorporating, lunch and learns, maybe once a month.
That's good.
Or even engagement events such as virtual cooking sessions, or things like that. Just encouraging wellness events periodically, or even consistently throughout the organization, and just starting slowly without. Because I know a lot of senior leaders worry about imposing health habits, but quite honestly, employers now are really looking towards their leaders to see how are they going to take care of me, or how are they taking care of me. So, and in the times that we're in, it's quite important for leaders to show compassion and to show that they care for their employees, and it's very welcomed. So any way they can is great.
That's true. When I in my previous life as an executive director, I implemented a free yoga session at lunch, and I had someone come in and do yoga, and for many months the yoga was well attended by staff and very much appreciated, and then after a while we saw the numbers really dwindle as far as participation, and I very quickly knew, as well as the other folks that were giving me feedback, that it had lost the change for the organization's need had changed, right? And so then we had to develop something different to address that, and to just look at different ways that they could then handle their stress if it wasn't the work. And we ended up doing a walk around the block, and that was well attended. So it just had to be really fluid, though. And just by the process of offering it, we were showing them we care about, your health and your wellness, and we want to create an environment where you understand that's our priority.
That is so true. And the way you re-strategize is perfect. And that's something that I do within my programs too, is constantly checking in with the employees, especially, finding out, how are you liking the current programs that we have? What would you like to see more of? And what I also create a wellness committee within an organization when I'm working long term with them. And then this is usually about 5 or 6 people within the organization that become the ambassadors of the program, so to speak, or the cheerleaders. And again, this is almost a way to filter those habits throughout the organization. And through their feedback, then we develop the program based on their needs. Because you're right, people's needs change. Maybe the time doesn't work anymore, or so it's always good to stay in touch and to keep them engaged, and to keep and it helps too with they feel valued when they are asked.
They're heard. Yeah. Well, and it's almost like your boots on the ground, right? To use an Army term, those are your folks that are in the trenches and are working, know what the needs are, and can recognize that and have access to those kind of communications.
Exactly.
I think another thing I was thinking about when you were talking about leadership, there are some real ways that leaders can probably enforce a culture that's healthy by saying things like, you don't come to work sick. I don't come to work sick. You don't come to work sick ever. I don't want to see a sniffle. And the reason being is because we need to have a healthy environment, and you're being selfish coming to work, not you're being selfish to not come to work, right? Which is what you kind of hear from people generally. The work ethic, the American work ethic and culture is to come work no matter what. So enforcing that and having a very strict structure of sick leave, a very strict structure, of time management and how much work you're giving people and the time allotted, so that they don't feel like they have to work these crazy hours because they have right amount of work, being aware of what your staff have.
Yeah, that's so true. And even things such as, if your birthday falls on the work week, use that as a self-care day, or, a family day, maybe once a month, free Friday, or even having, taking a hike as a company on Fridays, a fun Friday theme. And again, these are just very easy, very low cost ways to start immediately, actually. What recommendations are you making to your clients now that things are virtual? How are you reinforcing those relationships between the employer and the employees, and then helping build wellness outside of, obviously, we need to encourage our employees to stop at 5 and things like that. What recommendations are you making for this new world, right? We can't do yoga as a group together at lunchtime. We can just do it
in this box. But what ideas do you have? What are you telling your folks?
Well, that's a great question. And actually, through my Work from Home Healthy Habits program, one of the things I focus on, or actually 4 core concepts, are managing stress, sleep health, healthy eating, and time management. So it's a 4-week challenge for the company, and we incorporate movement. First week is a theme of how to get the company to move, and there's a step challenge, and that's how.
Okay.
And actually, our first session, which has been really popular, is we actually talk about the impacts of sitting for 8 to 10 hours a day, which is what we're doing a lot.
You don't have to tell my backside. Like, it knows. This is tough.
And I know one thing that hasn't been talked about a lot is because when employees are working at home, how is the office set up? Are people working on the bed? Are they crouched up, by the couch? And that is going to cause a lot of back pain, shoulder pain, things like that. And so through my program too, we help them set up an actual customer, or how to set up a home office.
Oh, I love that. That was actually one of my recommendations to my clients for their Christmas or holiday gifts for staff, was to think about things that they might need for a home office. That they don't have stuff. They threw it together on March 14th, and we have nothing else. So we had these spaces that are not meant to be worked in permanently. So I did suggest that. I still think that's going to be such a huge component as more and more organizations accept that we're not going to be back in the workplace in a traditional format ever again. This is the new normal, as people are calling it.
That is very true. I'm already seeing it. A lot of companies have said don't come in until maybe early next year. I know places like Hawaii are launching remote work programs.
Yep. It's changing permanently. And I think employees are going to demand it, right? I mean, they've gotten a taste of the good life in some ways, and they're like, why would I go back to an employer who didn't have that as an alternative? So that's a really great suggestion. And I love that you're helping provide feedback. Well, can you give me a few tips on what your workplace at home should look like to make you be the best version of yourself?
Well, definitely not the bed.
That's just a nap time place, right?
Not the bed. But if possible, I would encourage employers to find a designated area in their home space that's designated for, this is my work office. Because what I found is that, if your laptop is everywhere, then people are not feeling comfortable at home anymore, So just creating an oasis area where, okay, this is the place I go after work or during my lunch break. Could be, anywhere, anything from flowers, candles, an area just to give you that separation from your workspace. And then as far as the workspace, trying to get, unfortunately, a lot of chairs or office chairs are not, one size doesn't fit all. So I definitely encourage people and companies to start, working with specialists to actually help their employees set up a proper home office.
Ergonomic workspace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that's incorporated that we really focus on as well. But also for now, trying to make sure you, if you can, maybe set up a standing desk type, even if you don't have the desk per se, but try to set up maybe a box and then have your laptop on top. And then so you're switching from sitting to standing. Then that way you're not constantly sitting all the time. And then taking stretching breaks, it's very simple, just taking your arms up and, just.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I can do it right now. How about that?
Exactly. Just, just to vary up the day. And quite honestly, if anyone who's watching, I hear all the time, I don't have time to work out, but trying to set maybe a schedule where you take a morning walk for 10 minutes, lunchtime walk for 10 minutes, and an evening walk when you've shut off, then take 10 minutes. In that way, this is going to, that's the end of my day. This is how I start. And it would just start, it makes a difference, especially with the energy as well and your mood as well.
It's true. And how you react to things, like you set your mood, like how your employees respond to different incidents that are happening in the workplace and in the world and with their friends and their coworkers. They just react better if they're in a healthier place. So it's just a bigger issue than just that one employee.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really hope, any organizations that have, especially that were forced into this work from home, I saw a research paper or a survey that was released end of last year, where I think it was about 60-something% of employees that had started working from home. They said no one at work had actually called them to just say, "How are you?" Or no one, nobody had, and a lot of people, yes, have really enjoyed this remote working setup. But there's another group of people that are really struggling. They're feeling isolated at home.
Yeah.
And of course, when you go to work, it's a nice way to maybe escape from anything at home. We might love our family and whatnot, but it's that's that's a quick setup or separation was was welcomed.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, your extroverts, they're suffering and they've been suffering. I actually talk a lot to my clients about when you're looking at your different employees, they're all going to have different needs, and you need to be very open with them about how just because you don't necessarily like the teaming up, maybe you teamed up some of your employees together to do activities together so that they can bond over 10-minute lunch. Some of them feel like it's forced. Some of them are super excited. And just keeping in mind, like we're here to work as a team and figure out what's feeding our souls as a group. And sometimes that means I'm going to have to do a stupid game at lunch so that my extroverted coworker can get that love language fed that they need. And I think we forgot about those people. Us introverts were like, yeah, we never have to be in person again, but those extroverts really have suffered. You're right. And can't forget about that when we're developing our programs.
Definitely. And that's where that empathy and compassion comes in, trying to, and I know everyone is busy, and in many cases, people are a lot busier now. And I know the nonprofit organizations, just in general, historically have always, the workload has, in relation to, the team, it has sometimes been, a lot heavier to deal with. So I hope that, or at least I encourage leaders out there to be mindful that not everyone, I think I saw a term, or I heard this, same boat, different storm. So, it's everyone has responded differently, and people are, and because we don't have that in-person connection as much, it's hard to tell when someone's stressed. It's hard to tell when someone's almost burnt out. It's hard to tell when someone's dealing with depression. And so that's something to be very mindful about. And so just that, if a manager just picks up the phone and calls their, their assistant and just said, I'm not calling for any work issues. I'm just calling to say, how are things?
How are you?
Is there any way I can support you? And that is, that just goes a long way.
Yeah, so in my training where I talk about the next normal, one of the things that I talk about is how relationship building, it has to be so intentional right now that it can almost seem fake. So some personalities don't like that. Some personalities don't care if it's fake or not, as long as it gets you where you're going. But I tell my clients, you have to have scheduled time set aside, letting that employee know you are a priority and you have this time. And then when you start the conversation, you start with, how are you? How is your family? What can I do to make your job easier? Before you get into any of the other business, is there anything I need to know to help you be better? And I really do think it has to be almost like I told some of my clients, write it down, write those questions down word for word, and then read them off. And your staff member is going to be like, are you seriously talking to me like this? But that's okay until you get into the habit of it, right? And then it becomes almost rote. You're going to go through the process of listening to your staff member and letting them know, like, you are a priority for me. And not just you as an employee, but you as a human. And I'm not too busy for you, right? I'm going to make you time for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, and it's interesting you say that too. Leaders asking their, maybe their assistants or everyone in the company, but also asking and being compassionate with fellow leaders in the company.
Yeah.
Because what we tend to assume sometimes, we might see someone externally who always looks like they have it together, and those are often the people that we need to reach out to, because they tend to, sometimes people hide their feelings or hide what they're going through, bury themselves in work. So it's nice for it to be reciprocated, but
among your peer group.
Take that step, then
that's really a challenge, and especially with the clients that I work with, they're small nonprofits or startups, and usually there are no other leaders, right? It is the executive director, and they're in a silo. And then I really just try to encourage them to reach out to other executive directors in the community or people who can be advisors to them, that they can air their grievances and be heard and be affirmed for the decisions that they're making, but that they need to have something out there for them. And that requires them to be more purposeful about finding that resource than necessarily like a corporation where you have a whole, delegation of leaders that can seek each other out. It's just a little bit different dynamic.
Absolutely. And it's great that you support, CEOs and leaders with, your company and your services too, because leaders sometimes forget about themselves or don't feel that they have the time or that, there's a need for it. And quite honestly, when you take care of yourself, you can give yourself to others. It's hard to show up for others when you're not showing up for yourself. And there's always time for self-care. 30 seconds of taking a breathing break. We can all do that. And it helps with stress as well. So
and Ruvi, I'll even add to that most executive directors that I know don't realize the impact that they have on their staff, like the level of authority and also influence they have as mentors, even if their relationship with the employee is not good. That's just, it's such a level of influence. And if they're not healthy, it trickles down and just, it floods everything. And you can look at any organization out there, any nonprofit, any government, any world, anywhere where there's sick and there's poison, it's a leader at the top that's poisoning that. And so I think it's so important that you just keep emphasizing like that they have to take care of themselves because they're examples and have to be for the employees.
Absolutely. And it goes back to the initial example I provided where if a manager, doesn't email the employees during the weekend or after 5, because I always hear employees saying, well, if I get an email at 6, and he's or she is emailing me at that time, they feel obligated at that
Right.
point. So, and so that's something that can trickle from the top. And one of my favorite stories, I was working with a small company, and the CEO decided to start walking. Every Wednesday he wanted to increase the steps. So initially, people were actually, I wouldn't say afraid, but taking a lunch break was almost unheard of because everyone just walked through or, work through the lunch break. But when he started
he said it was okay. He did it.
It was okay. And he actually asked people, who wants to come with me. And so we started a walking challenge it was wellness walk day, Wednesday wellness day. And, so every Wednesday at noon, the company went for a walk. And it was so interesting. They told me that the conversations that they struck up during that walk, and they were able to get more personable with them, with their coworkers, because, you're walking.
You're relaxed.
You're relaxed. And
it's not work.
Necessarily, you're finding out, how is your family?
Yeah.
How's everything going?
Oh, I love that.
And things like walking meetings, I encourage that a lot with companies. And maybe when we get back in person, but you could still do that.
Oh yeah. Put your earpiece in.
Your earpiece in.
That earpiece that your executive director is going to give you for whatever next holiday, your birthday, then you're going to then put the earpiece in and you're going to have yourself a nice walking meeting.
Absolutely. Because not every meeting requires people to be on video. In fact, there's a lot of
too much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so even encouraging people, let's do a walking meeting. We'll treat this and
I love that.
So that's always a nice way to encourage wellness initiatives in the company. And I keep emphasizing because I know nonprofits, sometimes they shy away from wellness programs because of budget issues. But just simple habits such as this, maybe even an e-newsletter, which is something that my program provides as well, the wellness tip program via emails or newsletter, so they don't have to put that together. We put that together for them. But it's small and simple, and it's a small, simple step.
I love it. And Ruvi, that makes it very manageable for people who already feel so overwhelmed. Well, I really appreciate you coming today and talking to us and giving us you're giving us your expertise in this area, but also motivation to make some changes immediately. Like today, I don't like resolutions. Like it happens today and we just do it. And no matter what day of the year it is. And maybe we can leave the folks listening with a challenge to just implement one thing today and go on your website, check out some of the other opportunities that they may have to implement wellness within their organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. And if someone wants to start today and they're working at home, I would say give yourself a challenge to cover 30,000 steps each week. Now, that sounds daunting, but you could structure it in such a way, try to aim for 5,000 steps a day. And if you're not able to do 5,000 steps on a Monday, no problem. Don't get discouraged. Add those steps up to the next day. So maybe you do 2,000 steps on a Monday. On a Tuesday, you have more time. You could do 6,000 steps on Wednesday. So that way it's flexible, but at the end of the week, how many steps did I get?
Yes, and it's cumulative.
35,000, then you can increase. So that's where it's manageable and you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, 10,000 steps per day, which is not always possible at times. But,
right.
But even starting that or a 10-minute walk or something like that per day.
Yes. Okay. 30,000 steps. I want to start seeing those reports out on all the social media.
Right.
You can tag Ruvi and you can tag me, and we're going to help you with implementing at least this first step in incorporating wellness into a more healthy organizational culture. Ruvi, thank you again for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you.